It's official.
Well, hey, good evening. For those of you that are with us here live, it's November 20th.
That is crazy to me.
I'm just saying.
Like Thanksgiving is this week. It like crept up on us.
And your birthday is next week.
Yes. It's supposed to be a birthday month. We do birthday months in the Gorman household.
We kind of do, don't we?
You know, the great thing is Greg is like literally 11 months older than me.
10.
10 months. No.
10.
Well, okay, 10, 11, something like 10 months older than me.
10.
So all year long, somewhere along the line, I end up aging and I'm his age. And so by the time my birthday comes around, I was like, how old am I? Oh, I'm only going to be 54 or I'm old. Yeah. So it's kind of fun because then it's like I never really age. I've already come to terms with my age, the number. Anyways, we digress.
You don't really age anyway, love.
I do age. I do age.
Well, if you do,
I've earned
it's
every
like
single
wine,
one of
baby. You know what I'm saying? Like
Okay,
it just
these
gets
guys
better
don't
with
care
time.
about that. They want to hear about parenting tonight.
Okay.
So
Well-
we need to get to the topic. Hey, by the way, it is actually surprisingly, we thought we were going to have a couple more weeks, but this is our last week on the parenting series.
Pen's having a complete
So
fall
we are
apart.
going to wrap it up tonight with one of our favorite questions and really the principle that guides us through every single situation and circumstance in our parenting journey.
Yeah, it is. And I think that it will come out more I suppose with more of an emphasis towards adult parenting. That just happens to be the season that we're in. But I really want to say that even though I'm going to try to make sure we make some interjections that apply to folks that have younger kids. Although I think the majority of the audience, at least live tonight, have older kids.
Sure.
So anyway, we'll try to build a bridge for those of you that again, maybe have younger kids or maybe watching this on a recording or whatever. But at the end of the day, we hope that you picked up some tips and some little nuggets along the way. Every time I attend a seminar or something, or at least many times, I've heard like Zig Ziglar back in the day would say, if you take one thing and you actually use one thing from our time together, then it will be considered a success. And we hope that with each one of these calls that there's been one takeaway that has been able to stick with you. And if not, I encourage you to go back because they're there. I always hold myself to the level of accountability that I'm going to get from it whatever I choose to get from something. And it's rare that I listen to something that I'm not able to actually peel something away that I can actually implement. And so I want to encourage you guys, not that we're bringing, such brilliance or anything, but seriously, pull some things down. It's one thing for us. And I think so often because we live here in the United States and we have so much access to so much information and lots and lots of different things to stimulate our mind, that we forget to take the knowledge that we're receiving from our head into practical application. And I'm just telling you, I don't give a hoot about your head knowledge. I don't care. It doesn't impress me. My head knowledge doesn't impress me either, by the way. What impresses me is action, right? And I think that impresses, if there's such a thing as impressing God, I think that that's what impresses him as well, is when we take the time to actually make the applications to what it is that we're hearing. So as you listen tonight, if you choose to go back and review those lessons, they're available on YouTube. Yes.
Yep.
Miss Donna's done a great job of making those available.
Yes.
Thank you for always serving so faithfully, Donna. And then and she'll make this one available tonight if you got friends you want to share it with or whatever. But take what you're hearing and think to yourself and ask God, okay, Lord, how can I apply at least one principle from these teachings to begin to either encourage other parents or to build some bridge between you and your kids along the way. So nothing, and we've said this before, but I'm just going to say, we're not into prescriptions, right? Not saying that there's not a time and a place for them. Not to say that we never offer something. We say, well, let me encourage you to maybe consider doing this. We always leave it open-handed, but what we're teaching is not meant to be a prescription like, take one of these, drink a bunch of water, get a good night's rest, it'll all be better tomorrow. These are all things that have to do with process, they have to do with embracing a new thing for you to carry in your spirit, right? And begin to move forward. And so you have to kind of listen to what we're saying and what the other people are offering as best practices, usually towards the end of the call, and discern, okay, how does that apply to me? And or how would I, how would that work in our family culture? Because
Right.
every single one of you have a different family culture than what we have. We talked about this a little bit last week, love.
Yep.
That sometimes we grabbed some borrowed principles and some borrowed philosophies from other people. And when we tried to implement them in our family, it was just a train wreck. It just didn't
We
work.
didn't
It
have
was
the
awkward.
relationship. It was a different dynamic.
It wasn't
for
our culture.
family. Yeah.
It just simply now some of those we adapted and we made them part of our culture, but it takes, listen to me, it takes time to build culture. It takes time to build culture in an organization, in a family, and so on and so forth. And so if there's some things that inspire you here, we'd encourage you to grab it. Just understand that again, you need to keep your brain intact. We're not teaching you what, we're teaching you how, and giving you some suggestions on some things that we've learned over the years from mistakes we've made and successes as well. Take it away, Maestro.
Yeah. So, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the different seasons of parenting. There are various seasons that we go in and out of. So what we've tried to do is give you principles that work regardless of the season. And so in this way, one of the things that we realized is we needed to navigate and pivot and make the changes as our kids were making those changes. So in other words, we had to modify our approach. We had to adapt to the season. And third, we needed to adjust our approach to it. So we needed to modify our approach, adapt to the season, and then adjust our approach based off of what our kids needed in the season that they were in. So I have to say the adult parenting season was the one that took me by surprise. That's probably not a shock for those of you that have been with us throughout this last 6 weeks, but there was just this place where I didn't expect some of the challenges. I was ready to launch my kids. I was ready for them to enter into adulthood. But we went through a little bit of a different kind of a season because one of our kids moved clear across the state. It was about 20 hours away.
Clear across the country.
Clear across the country. Sorry. Yes. Multiple states away. And then another one was another 20 hours north of that. And then we had one that was actually going through with all the COVID, really went through a struggle in their faith. And so there was just a lot of different dynamics a few years ago that it didn't match the picture that I had in my head. And so one of the things.
Well, what's the picture you had in your head?
The picture in my head was we would launch them, they would all get married, and they'd live at least maybe like a half hour away from our home.
So kind of the happily ever after,
The
pick white
happily
picket
ever
fence,
after.
they come and it's just all great family time. We all
Right.
love each other and right.
We're going to have birthday parties and we're going to have Sunday afternoon meals. And it was just, I had really grown to love family. And so I had to come to terms that my plans wasn't necessarily what God had in store for my kids. And so I think it's really crucial because we're talking about the dynamic of this relationship. Greg was actually a lot more ready for this season of adult parenting than I was. And so he's like, yeah, go on and get out of it. No, but he had a different picture in his head. He didn't hold to the same kind of idealism that maybe I carried. And so I think it's really important to talk about what the picture is in your head around your kids. Just as important as it is to understand what you feel like last week we talked about what your core belief was that God had you as your kids' parents, like to land on what you truly
What's
believed
your job as a parent?
Your job was as a parent to them. And so I think equally important is to really begin to look at what do I have envisioned in my head, because expectations can cause confrontations, not just in this relationship, but in our parenting journey as well. And so one of the greatest things that I think God gave me through my process was this singular question, and that was, what does love require? What does love require? And that meant that I had to change what I was needing for the sake of what my kids were needing. It doesn't mean that they could just run off and not have respect for our home or anything like that, but my kids weren't doing anything wrong. So I had to adjust my mindset and ask, what does love require? I think about the different seasons. I'll pass this back to you. But as toddlers, our kids needed consistency. They needed firm parameters and discipline to know what was right, what was wrong. They needed that laying of the groundwork of just consistency. As teenagers, we started to play more of the role of coach and help them to test what they were learning. We would ask them for their thoughts, what they were processing. And then as adults, and this is maybe the part that we've alluded to, but we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail. Love required something completely different. And I wrote this down. Love requires that we parent from influence as an adult to an adult. In essence, we could only leverage in this season our influence. It's more of a friendship. It's more of, we needed to learn to be invited. We needed to be welcomed in order to give our opinion. And we found it better that if we just encouraged our kids rather than offering a lot of advice. And so in all of that, we had to change maybe our methodology and the way that we were interacting with our kids to that kind of consistency of how can I gain influence? And that just required a lot of different interactions as they were stepping into adulthood. All right, I'm passing it back to you.
Okay.
Thoughts about that?
Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind, love. Our tendency, I think, at least I'm gonna all own it, our tendency or my tendency. I think it's so crucial on your parenting journey to assess what season you're really in, because what we tend to do is we as parents tend to think that and try to hang on to the season we were in, right? And it is a grave mistake. It really is a grave mistake, and it's an easy one. So I'm not trying to make you feel bad if you struggle with this. It's really natural, for you to do this, but it's really crucial that we not, because what happens when we do that is we really, really frustrate our kids, and they in turn frustrate us, right? And it is an easier fix, I think, than what we realized it was until we kind of, and it's been a transition with each season, meaning that we kind of overplayed for a while and stayed in a season that was past. And then we sort of realized that the season was changing.
Yep.
And then we had to figure out what it was exactly that we needed to adjust and think through it. And so I'm bringing this up not just because of the parenting aspect of this, but lest we not mention and or even emphasize the dynamic of your relationship as marriage partners as it applies to parenting. Because y'all got to be listen to me, communicating with one another about this stuff. And men, I want to encourage you to be firm, but very gentle with your wife in this season, because they see things differently. And it doesn't mean that we always see it logically and she sees it emotionally and therefore she's wrong. Okay. That's not the case. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. But I'm just speaking to, I know guys that I talk with a lot and myself sometimes, how I see it. And even in conversation with my son, I'm trying to make sure that I'm correcting this just in his mindset towards females, towards women. Again, it comes back to the conversation. There's the head and there's the heart, which is more important, right? They're both equally as important, right? So the head and the heart are very, very important. And I think it's important that our men understand that as much as our women do. So talk about these things. Talk about when you sense that there's a transition. Sometimes, at least in our home, I would say that I recognize the transition happening more quickly, right? And so I would initiate some conversation. There's some of these conversations that has taken a few months, right, for them to settle into your heart, to be able to recognize it. And so all of that to say, it's really, really important that you present yourself in a united front, you stay on the same page. And the only way you can do that is if you have permission to have conversations in private and you open that door to be able to conversate and strategize. Where are we exactly? What the flip is going on anyway? You know what I mean? There's times your kids are just reacting and everything. It's just like, man, we've been trying to have time with you guys. We've been trying to plan special events. We've been trying to do this. We've been trying to do that. And it just seems like it's chaos and it doesn't work every time. So that's a cue. What's going on? When it's little, maybe there's something going on internally with the kids. Maybe there's lack of consistency in the home. And so, we need to address those things. As they continue to get older, it's probably because we're trying to treat them as kids, and or we have a false expectation that we need to align with reality. Did you catch that? That we really need to align with reality so that we don't patronize our kids. Final thing, and then I'll give it back to you, love. But we were decorating the Christmas tree last night. Can I get this real?
Yeah, sure. I already did with the women in the prayer group. So
Okay.
yeah.
So this has kind of been a big thing for us over the years. It's one of our ongoing traditions. And we had two of our kids and their significant others with us. And we were kind of looking forward to this evening, and we had dinner and, the tree decorating. And it just felt so
Out of sync.
And
We were trying too hard, and it really, I look back and it's just like, there are some things that we can't necessarily recreate. We believe that there'll be a season where everything gets back to a little bit more normalcy.
absolutely.
But the important thing is here is, what does love require? Having that conversation with one another is like, what is realistic for this season? And not holding one another hostage to have the same feelings or emotions around it, but being able to discern, okay, this is what we believe God called us to do as these kids' parents, holding each other accountable to that. So how does that look in this particular season? And what we're realizing is every season it changes. And I think for me, I'm finally at a place that I'm releasing the idea of what I thought it should look like. And so be able to challenge those ideas. And if there's something that's in your heart that is more than an idea, it's what God desires for your family, that's when you can come in unity together, pray about that thing, because even if circumstances change, the object of what God has called you to do as parents doesn't. In other words, God still has called us to prepare our kids to be successful. He still has called us to love them unconditionally, to provide an atmosphere where there's no doubt that they are loved, accepted, and valued. And then also that their faith is their own faith. And so with all of that, we come back to the fundamentals. We help one another through differences of opinion, and then ask, what does love require for this season? And right now for us in our journey, love requires taking our hands off and letting them launch into a life that maybe we wouldn't choose for them.
Yeah, sometimes that's the case. I want to come back to the Christmas things. I wasn't done there.
Oh boy.
So, well, it's just really quick though, but I think it's important because it's what I felt like God was speaking in my spirit as I was sitting there. And Julie and I were both frustrated, and we were trying not to be, but it was just like, wow, this is just a complete cluster.
Like, why did we even try this?
Like,
What are we doing?
yeah, like it was frustrating, and it kind of felt like a SpongeBob SquarePants episode or something. It was just, I don't know, it was just disconnected. And what I felt like God spoke to me is they're young. They weren't doing anything wrong. They were not doing anything wrong. That's the thing. They just were kind of in their own space. Summer and her boyfriend were kind of in their own little world. Joshua and Ari were kind of in their own little world. And then Julie and I were sitting there trying to draw them into ours.
What in the world kind of world are we in?
Yeah. And it just felt weird. So if you find yourself in that situation, and I'm hoping that you guys can relate to some of these things that we've talked about, not because I'm hoping that you have, a bad dynamic in your family, but just because, so the teaching's applicable. But I just felt like it gave me a lot more grace to think they're just young, and this is a season, but it's a very temporary season. Things will change again once they're out, and then they do value this, and the dynamic probably will still change yet again. It won't be what it was in the first 23 years of raising them. So I'm going to come back to the notes. That was all for free. I'm going to come back to the notes real quick and just talk about specifically some of the things in this season of adulting. I've said some of it already, but I want to talk about the conversations, love.
Okay.
and how we conversate as they come to us.
Mhm.
One of the things that I often tell parents is be careful about answering their questions. Be really careful about telling them what to do. Some of y'all need to hear that again. Listen to me, please. Be careful. You're doing it sometimes and you don't even realize that you're doing it. Be careful about telling them what to do, even when they ask you to. Did you catch me? They don't really want you to. They may in the moment, but I'm telling you, what they want is they want you to feel confident in their decision making. I've had to say this a lot recently, and I'm sure, Julie, you have as well. But a couple of them have come and asked, what do you think about this? What should I do here? You know, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, look, I need you to understand you're an adult now. And I know you know that in some moments, but I'm not dismissing you. And that's the reason I'm prefacing with this, because I don't want you to feel dismissed. I love you and I'm here and I'm willing to talk through some things with you and have a discussion. But I will not tell you what I would do or what I think you should do. I'm not going to do it, because guess what? It ain't my life. It's your life. And you have got to make these decisions, face the consequences, positive or negative consequences, based on the decisions that you make at this point. Now, if I think they're absolutely going to drive the train completely off the cliff, I'll offer them a thought, but very cautiously and very gingerly. Can I speak into that? Always ask for permission. And then, based on their response, not the words that they say, the intonation of their voice, the body language, and all of that. Because if I catch that they're telling me, yeah, go ahead, then I'm like,
Never mind.
it ain't for me, man, or it ain't for me, gal. This ain't for me. So it's all good. If you're ready and when you're ready, come back and we'll have a conversation. But I don't need to impose anything on you. Okay.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's the primary thing. Now, one of the things that I know that you loved, and I'd like you to speak, that one of the things that you did so well and have done, and I'd love for you to speak to it, is just the idea of, and we've talked about it a little bit before, but set me up for success.
Yeah,
Do you
so one of my
need,
favorite questions, and we did share this with you, is do you need friend, coach, or mom?
you need to repeat that. Somebody needs to hear it and take a note.
Yep. So my kids would ask me something, and again, I didn't want the backlash from it. So I learned to simply ask, do you need me to be a friend right now? Do you need a coach right now? Or do you need mom? And each one of those had a very distinct meaning. What I think for the friendship rule, think about your friendships. In your friendships, you don't necessarily tell your friend everything that you're thinking. In your friendship role, right, you have influence. You don't try to fix them. At least a good friend doesn't try to fix their friend. And with a friendship, you offer respect, you give sincere apologies, and really great friendships make memories.
Yeah, so I think that it's important to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, we've talked about this a lot, but I really think that tonight, when you think about what does love require, one, love requires, especially as they begin to transition into adulting season, for you to resist the temptation to control them. And again, I'm telling you, some of y'all are really failing in this. I'm not trying to speak that into you or over you. I just know, because we've watched our own dynamic, and we've also dealt with enough other parents in this season, and even in their teenage season. You know, again, if we try to control them, what happens is they'll do what we want them to do and they'll give us the answers, but you won't know your kids, because when they're not in your presence, they're going to do what they're going to do. This is all the more reason why we wanted their faith to be their own. It's all the more reason why we've really tried to, as a parent, operate in the role of a coach many times, which means that we, from the time about 14, 15 especially, we parented with a lot more questions. So we might ask a question like, they ask us a question and they want an answer back, and we're like, well, what do you think? We resist. that temptation to tell them what we think or what they think they ought to think, right? And we ask them, what do you think? Well, I don't know. Well, when you know, then you come back and you ask me the question again, and I'm going to ask you that question, and then we got something to talk about. But I'm not trying to program you. I need you to think. I need you to know what you think. It's an epidemic in our society. Honest to goodness, people don't know what they think. Why? Because they're farming it out to all the talking heads on TV, their friends, their family members, and so on and so forth. Why? Because we don't have to bear the responsibility of our decision then. We can just kind of float along. Thinking's hard. Thinking for yourself is really difficult work when you do it, and you do it well, and you take it seriously. And so we encourage our kids. The other thing is make sure you're speaking life. If anybody can figure it out, I know that you will. I encourage my kids by telling them, you are going to screw it to flip up. Doesn't that sound encouraging? But you know what? You've got permission to. I let them know, seriously, guys, you're not going to do it perfectly, and it's okay. I didn't do it perfectly. I still don't. Right. But I think sometimes giving them permission to make some mistakes, it takes the pressure off of them to have to prove something to you. You know what I'm saying? And I've watched my kids respond to this. One, I've watched them, and now they're way more so in the habit of thinking, when we say, well, what do you think about that? Or again, one of the questions we asked before in one of the previous lessons was, why do you ask that question? What's got you thinking about this? Right. And so I think so often we can be really quick to offer our response when really what we need to do is we need to find out what's really going on. And then, of course, encourage them to have thoughts of their own. Sometimes we'll ask another great question. What are some of the options that you've considered? What are some of the things that you have been thinking about? Maybe what are some of your friends said? How can I help you excel? What is it that you really need from me right now? And there's been times, like I know for summer, this is a great example. Do you need mommy, to love and coddle you? Or you need daddy to kick your butt into excellence?
Yeah.
And she's pretty cool about being able to respond to that and know what she needs in a particular moment, don't you think?
Yeah.
And so I love that about her. And then, yeah, I think, in summarization of that, you can't lead them without permission. You understand what I'm saying? And sometimes we try to lead them with influence that we used to carry. You still carry the influence, but if you try to force it, you're going to meet with resistance. And that's what we've learned. And so how can you gain permission in your kids to parent them again and to have a voice in their life? If you're meeting resistance with every single thing that you offer as a suggestion, back off until they've decided to give you that place of influence again. And then you can begin to speak. But when you do, be careful again to initiate with questions rather than answers and trying to control them, because they'll push back. They'll resist you, and you feel it. That's the tension you feel when you feel them pushing back. So it's just frustrating, the two of you. What would you add to that,
I
Big
would
O,
just
when
say,
it comes
watch
to that
watch
specifically?
the self-talk. Okay, so I'll just tell on myself. Sometimes I try too hard. And have you ever met somebody who just tries too hard?
It's not very attractive.
It's not very attractive. And then I catch myself doing it. It's like I'm really trying to connect with them. I'm really trying to have this engaging conversation. And they're doing a SpongeBob SquarePants episode. And so I have to
Just acting goofy.
just acting goofy, in other words. Yeah. So I think I've had to really guard my self-talk and not take offense to it, just like we do in our relationship, just like you do in your relationships with one another, choosing to not be offended, choosing to sometimes there's really great connection and it just seems like you've had that moment. And then sometimes it's just another normal, ordinary day and it's okay. So I think it's really important to pay careful attention, though, to the thoughts that you're entertaining. And one of the things that I think is tricky in parenting is as those seasons are changing, When you're going between coach and friend and mom or dad and all of those different seasons, knowing which hat to wear, watch your kids, and look for the opportunities though to continue to discover them. So some of the great
That
questions
is so good.
that we have learned to ask, that we practice, not trying too hard, but we do look for those moments to engage and maybe go a little bit surface deep, a layer deep, deeper than normal. And that is, what do they dream about? Constantly keeping on the pulse of what it is that they're dreaming about. We like to ask our kids what it is that they desire. What do they want to experience in life? A great question that we have asked from little on up all the way up into the adult years. So it's kind of second nature for us in our household, but who do they want to become?
That's it. Yeah.
And as a parent, it's really important for me to know who they want to become, not who I want them to become, right? I don't want to live vicariously through them. Their happiness, them making me happy isn't part of the equation. It's really understanding what makes them tick. What do they desire? Who do they want to become? Because those are the kind of things like, you said this. So if this is who you want to be, will this action, activity, or decision move you closer to that? A lot of the great questions, again, from little on up, all the way up to, I think even more important in the adult parenting is, what do you need from me? Or how can I support you? So guys, we've alluded to these kinds of questions, but they're great ones to keep in your side pocket to come back to, of what do your kids dream about? Begin, no matter how little or how old they are. It's a great question. I love when Greg asks me, what are you dreaming about? Who do you want to be known for? It calls people up and it causes them to really think about who they want to be.
You gotta ask it
and
in the
what
right
they're-
moment, though.
Yeah. And don't try to force it. If I could give any advice, it would be just to relax into the season, support one another, ask really great questions, and then, just don't try so hard.
Yeah.
You want to go to the phone lines, ask some questions? You got some more, baby.
Let me look through these notes here real quick just to see, because I want to make sure. I think in summarization, I love what you just talked about. First of all, we have used imagery a lot and vision. So in our ministry, we leverage vision a lot for couples, because so often many of us rehearse the past, or we rehearse our current resistance or the current issues, that justify our reason for feeling the way that we feel. And basically, we're just justifying why we suck. You know what I mean? And it doesn't help us. It doesn't move us forward. I'm not trying to be ornery with you. I'm just saying, like, life is in the future. We look at the past, we assess the current, we look at the past to gain perspective, but not to rehearse justification for being held back. Listen, what we're doing when we do that is we're fighting for our limitations. Don't fight for your limitations by constantly justifying why you feel the way you feel. As you do that, what you do is, what you feed grows, what you starve dies. So you just build a case that continues to stay stuck in that particular season, in that particular circumstances. And so we've learned to leverage vision, which simply asks, the answer to the vision question is, what do you want? What do you want? So as it applies to your children, first of all, what do you and your spouse want in this season? Keep it relevant for your family, for your kids. And then make sure that, again, you can't really begin to move forward with what you want until you really do accurately assess your current reality. And that's a step that sometimes we often pass over. We talked about that a lot this evening. Understand and assess, what reality are we currently in, and then how are we going to deal with the current reality to move into the future that we want. And your relationship, I said to somebody recently, another parent, I said, man, our kids are going to judge us largely in these next several years by how we respond in this particular season. And it's really important that we guard the relationship. It's not about telling them what to do. It's not about preventing every ounce of pain. You can only do what you can do, and you can only do what they will receive at this stage in life when they begin to
Right.
adult. You can have the greatest wisdom in the world, but as the old adage is, you can lead a horse to water. Doesn't mean your kids are dumb. Doesn't mean that they're, rebellious even. It just means that they are doing a very natural thing in asserting their independence, and they need to do that. Sometimes less, but they need to do that. And so when we ask, what does love require? I'm reminded of a scripture, and I'm just going to read it. It's written down here. First Corinthians 13 describes love like this. It says, love is patient. I need to work on that sometimes with my kids. Love is kind.
Right.
I need to work on that sometimes with my kids. Love does not envy, and love does not boast. Again, I think that this is something that sometimes we can boast about. Well, I did it this way, or, when I was your age, I was doing this or that. I'm guilty of that, or at least thinking it, but love doesn't envy, and love doesn't boast. Love's not proud. It does not dishonor. It's not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth, and it always protects, always trusts, always hope, always perseveres, and love never fails. So I hope that encourages you and gives you some fodder to chew on, and that there's at least one principle, one thought that struck you in a circumstance maybe that you're dealing with in your family, no matter what age they are right now, or maybe even between the two of you, and coming together and presenting in unity and having some kind of assessing and then some moving forward conversations with your spouse as well, which I think is incredibly important.
Yeah. When we're going to open up the phone lines, I think the last thought that I really have is there are many things that we can't control in parenting. We can parent as perfect as any perfect parent, like our Heavenly Father. We've talked about this. He's a perfect parent. And yet each one of us at one point or another have made a wrong decision that required his grace in our life. But what we can control, so we can't control exactly what they do. We can't control how they think. We can't control what they do. Now we need to set up parameters, especially as they're younger, have all of the protocols in place for protecting them. But what we can control is we can control our attitude. We can control the seeds that we plant. We can control the atmosphere that we have in our home as far as being a welcoming atmosphere. And then we can control our responses and the things that we're feeling by giving them back to God and asking him, God, what do you have to say about this? And then operating in the Holy Spirit in cooperation with him. So with all of that, we want to encourage you to keep planting the right seeds, have unity in your parenting, leverage one another's strengths. Don't be in opposition to one another, but lean on one another, and especially being patient and kind and not easily provoked in your parenting with one another.
Yeah. And as you open it up, and we're just, if you've got questions, if you've got comments, y'all know the drill. Raise your hand with the little, wiggy diggy down there in your screen. Or if not, wave your hands, and, we'll grab you, because we can see you now. But I think the other thing that I would just want to remind you of again is understand that you just can't give what people aren't willing to receive. And it is important in those moments to assess, where's this resistance coming from? What like there's times I know that there's been seasons where I just feel like every conversation there's resistance. And we've learned to kind of pan back and think, okay, what am I doing And what do I need to do to be able to gain influence again? Because if we just try to press harder, because I tried that, just press harder, try to control more, then what happens is it literally pushes them away. And again, what happens is they might even give you the right answers while you're standing in front of them, but when they're on their own, and this is something not just for adult kids, this is for your teenagers. I promise you, this is for your teenagers. They're going to act a fool and they're going to do stuff that you would be appalled by. So protect the relationship. Don't let them get away from murder. Call them on their crap. Okay. But protect that relationship and earn the right again to speak into them. And sometimes the best way to do that is just simply to back off a little bit, let them suffer some consequences, and then they're a little bit more amenable to be able to hear from you again. And even then, be careful about the I told you so's and trying to oversteer, allowing to make some mistakes. Okay, there's so much more I could say, but I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to take it. Peggy's got a question or a comment, and I want to hear from her.
So I'm wondering what you meant by that our kids will judge us by how we handle this season.
Great question.
It is a great question. Julie and I have talked about this a lot, Peggy, because we are probably going to have 2 weddings this year. We know we're going to have 1. We're pretty sure we're going to have 2. And so those 2 children are still living here. And David, we see you there too, by the way. And one of the co-parents, it really feels like they just feel overbearing. Every conversation is about how they think these kids should handle the things that they're doing and the decisions that they're making. And we don't fully endorse all these decisions that the kids are making, but I've only got so much that I can speak into those things. And I'm okay with allowing them. What I want to do is I think it's really important for us, Peggy, to press into them and to encourage them and to support them in this season the best way that we know how. And then they're more amenable to actually listening to us rather than, again, trying to force and manipulate, which I see from this other parent couple, trying to manipulate the situation and maneuver around and it's just unattractive and it's just pushing the kids away. And I'm going to tell you something. I want to be careful because you never know who's going to listen to these calls later on.
We're just going to take these Q&As off.
Q&As off of it for the published point. We are going to, so I'm going to speak freely. The bottom line is that they're really trying to control, and with every conversation with these kids, there is where they should take their honeymoon, where they should move to, what kind of job they should take. It is everything. And they are well-intended, and I understand that, but I'm watching with the kids and I hear their private conversations a lot of times. And I'm telling you, those kids are moving away from us and them right now because of that. They're absolutely, and I'm going to tell you something, that part, Peggy, I am in support of. I think the kids do need to move away. I don't want them to, but I think in this instance, they need some distance so that they can get some autonomy. And there's some things, it's kind of like I say it this way. I've given all I can give at this point. I'm only going to be able to give more once they go out there and they screw some stuff up and they just simply learn something. They're going to screw it all up, but they are going to screw some things up, and they need to. And then the rest of it, they're gonna learn, and they need to learn on their own. So I'm just giving them the freedom to do that. And if they come back and like, oh my God, I'm on fire, we'll put them out, but we're not gonna pull them away from all of the consequences of their decisions and such. So that's what I mean. I think it's important for us to preserve the relationship. It doesn't mean we endorse everything that we're doing. And we've shared with them, we do not endorse and we don't support every decision that you're making right now. We're not even going to get into the details of which ones those are, but we love and support you guys. And what's important to us is that we maintain a relationship so that if you catch on fire, you know that we're still here to put you out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. How did they respond to you saying we don't endorse or support your decisions, but I'm not going to tell you which ones?
Yeah. So, it's actually been a really great, healthy process of letting go because we've been able to say, we're going to miss you tremendously. And you moving away and going to where you're going is not what we would choose for you, but we support you. I think what we're doing in that process is communicating love, respect, acceptance, value, all the principles that are important, while not neglecting our responsibility to say, we're not sure that this is the wisest decision. And now, as time has elapsed, we actually are more in support of that. But I think what's important that Greg was alluding to is we are judged by this season of time. They don't remember all the sleepless nights that we stayed up with when they were sick. They don't remember the countless hours of conversation and helping them through the years of teenage and middle school mean years.
Or when you wipe their nasty butts.
Right, because I was the only one who changed diapers. But anyway, they don't remember that.
It's funny now.
What we're being judged by, what we're being remembered by is this season of time. And so what we're trying to do is navigate this season and not borrow from the relationship that we had of all the intentionality. We could waste all of that intentionality if we weren't intentional in this
And
season.
we could beat ourselves down thinking we screwed it up and like, where did, because everything's it's just weird, and we're not allowing that though. And we're just kind of going, okay, Lord, show us what to do. And that's why, again, last night, I felt like God spoke to me, they're just young. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just young. Let them be young. Right. And
That's really good. That's really good thought, that they're judging us by now, by what they remember and what maybe they remember the last 5 years or so.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if they give us credit. They do though. They grow up,
eventually.
they go away. They come back more appreciative.
They really do.
No question.
Really,
Takes a while.
Did. Eventually I did. What'd you say, Neil?
Takes a while.
Yeah, sometimes it does.
It
Sometimes
does.
it does. I was about 23 when the lights began to came on, and then they came on again at about 28 to 30, somewhere around in there. Right. They've gotten dimmer and dimmer since then, but just kidding.
Great question. Thanks for asking, Peggy. All right, David, you're up. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. Would love to hear your thoughts, questions, comments.
Okay. Hey guys, good to see you.
Good to see
You
ya.
too, buddy.
So I'm actually in my truck. I'm on my way home from a funeral and I'm waiting for somebody to come home from work or wherever he's at so I can stop by to look at a sofa I'm hoping to get from him. So kind of, but anyway, I missed the first about 15 minutes of this call. And so I missed, a little bit of that preliminary stuff, but the main thing that I thought I wanted to ask about is you were talking about you can give your kids suggestions. Now, you said this is more geared towards adult kids, the grown-ups.
This call was, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mixed a little bit. What's your question?
So you said you were talking about you can't force your kids, but like you can give suggestions. So where would you break that down with a teenager, a minor teenager, where getting into things that's absolutely off the table, no option?
Right.
Like it's not like, okay, well, I could suggest you maybe not do that again, when it's like, no, this,
Yep, great question. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that question. Do you want to take a stab first, or you want me
Yeah,
to go?
we and this last week we talked about letting our kids know you can do whatever you want. Just be willing to pay for the consequences. And so I think when you're thinking about teenagers, as a parent, love requires us to protect them from themselves. And while they're under of our roof, we have firm rules in place, not because we're mad at them, not because we're trying to, be a joy kill, buzz kill, whatever you want to say. We have the rules in place for their protection. And so there's a place where they can, what we've realized is they can make any decision that they want to, and based off of their decisions will be the consequences, either good or bad. And so I think it's really important to, we talked about rules without relationship breeds rebellion. So we don't just do it because I told you so.
Right.
We have a rule in place, the reason the rule's in place, and then we talk to them again as we build on all of these different calls. We've talked about there's 2 plans for your life. One will lead you this direction and bring life. One will lead you this direction, which produces death. And so all of those things culminated into, I think your question is it okay to have firm boundaries and rules for your home? Absolutely. Our kids need it. They need it. They need to know where the boundaries lie. And if they cross that boundary, we discipline them for the sake of their own protection, not because we're mad at them. What would you add, love?
Well, I love how you responded. I really do. I think, David, again, I would encourage you to go back and listen to some of the other calls again that Julie talked about. Last week's call, again, she talked about that we told our kids, we want you to redline on fun. There's very few things in life that bring us more joy than when we hear your laughter or when we see you enjoying life. But what we don't want you to do as you're redlining is we don't want you to blow the engine. And every now and then, because I've got a few more years under my belt than you do, and because I'm not in your whirlwind, I'm outside of it looking in, you have to trust my wisdom, and then so there's that piece, the other part of it, again, Julie alluded to, is that you can do whatever you want to. You just need to be willing to pay the price, face the consequences, positive or negative, for the decision of doing what you want to do. And I need you to understand that. Now, in my house, there are some consequences that not just life, but I will impose upon you if you break the rules of my home. And I need you to understand that these are non-negotiable. And I think this is important. I'm not saying that our kids don't need grace. There's been times when one of the most brilliant things that we ever did is we said, what do you deserve? And they're like, I deserve to have my toenails pulled out, and that we did when they were really young. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But they would tell us, this harsh, punishment that they think they deserved or whatever. And then when we responded back with, well, I'll tell you what, that is probably what you deserve. But here's what's going to happen. We want you to encounter the grace that we encountered with Christ. And so, there was more to the conversation, but we offered grace. Okay.
Yep.
But I think coming back to, again, we have to have this is a long-term game. And sometimes what we do is we're just reactionary in our parenting. And that's why Julie and I had conversations early on about what's the object of the game here? What the flip are we trying to accomplish with our kids? We want them to know that they're loved unconditionally. We want them to make sure that they are people of excellence and they stand out in the crowd. And we want their faith to be their own, not pre-programmed faith, which peels out when they go to college and somebody presents some logical idea that seems to make more sense. So who do they want to be? Who do they want to become? When you think about this in a long-term parenting relationship, right? The long game, when you begin to get an idea and get them to confess who it is that they want to be, we can't do this when they're in hot water because they're just going to clam up and they're going to answer, And there's been times when I've asked it and it's been really frustrating. He's like, oh no, this won't be me, and I'm like, oh, brother, that's what I thought, And so again, it's a long game, but when you can get an idea and plant in their mind who it is that they want to be known as, who do they want to become? How do they want to be known, right? Who do they want to become? Then you can begin to leverage that in your parenting. When you get that, then you're able to speak life. When they flub it all up, you can say, this is not who you are. This is not who you're designed to be. You are better than this, right? That's better than some of the things maybe that I've said sometimes that speaks down to their identity rather than call their identity up. So, and then the final thing that I want to say specific to the question that you asked, David, is I think that you need to sit with Mary and y'all need to discern what's going on and what are the consequences of not obeying the house rules. Decide firmly what those are. Communicate those to your, I think, daughter in this case. And let her know, I need you to understand something. We love you. And we want you to redline on fun. We just don't want you to blow the engine. You're going down a pathway that you're not going to go down in this house. There's been times where I've even the kids have gotten out of a hot shower, and come out and dried themselves off. And you enjoy that hot water? You enjoy that good shower? Did you enjoy that meal you had? Then let me tell you how this is going to go down. You're going to do this, this, and this. This is not for debate. There's a firm, like not aggressive, but a firm consistency there that I think that they will push back on. But if they know that it's firm and it's not going anywhere, they'll respect it and they'll steer within between the lines, generally speaking. But I think that when you discern what those consequences are, you must be willing to follow through with them.
Yes.
You can't waffle on that, because if you do, it literally creates insecurity in our kids, and they don't really know where the boundary lines are. And so they'll continue to try to push until they find them. This is a massive mistake that we see lots of parents make and that we've made. We tell them, you do that again, I'm going to swat your hind end, or I'm going to, send you to bed. And then we don't do it. We cave because it's too hard. That's selfish parenting, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do that and to follow through. So when we're discerning what those consequences are, we need to be discerning and be realistic. What's appropriate to the offense? And sometimes some offenses require some pretty legit reprimanding, some taking away of some privileges. And again, if you go back to the previous call, you'll remember, or you'll hear us talk about the fact that we said that, the way that you earn freedom is by earning freedom. You don't get X, Y, or Z just because you hit a particular age. That ain't how it works. You earn freedom because you demonstrate good judgment in this space. And as you demonstrate good judgment, we let a bit more leash out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And as you demonstrate good judgment there, you get more freedom. So all you got to do is demonstrate good judgment. This is not up to us. This is up to you. You put the monkey on their back. This is going to go really, really good for you if you choose to make it go really, really good for you and make good decisions. If you don't, I'm going to tell you, next few years are going to suck for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put your rear end kicking field goals.
Yeah. So when you have, you said when you have like boundaries for your house, and then, and especially in an area where there's some like very specific, like non-negotiable, like this is not even close to negotiable.
Right.
Yeah.
You would still convey it like, when I say non-negotiable, what I mean is it's not just a matter of kind of preference. It's like literally a matter of safety and whatever, that they can't do certain things.
Totally, dude. Yes.
You would still kind of convey it to them like, you can, in the way of, you can do whatever you want if you're willing to pay the consequences of your actions if you violate this.
Yeah. And I'm going to be some of the consequences. You need to understand
Right.
that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not
Because-
just the
because I
consequences
love
of
you.
life, because there's
Yeah.
going to be consequences in life. But I need you to understand that as long as you're in my house, you're going to respect my rules. This is not like a, again, kind of one of these things. I
Right.
think,
Right.
again,
Right.
we're all tempted to do that, and I've done it myself before, but that's not the energy that we want to try to portray. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
We get it right. It's consoling, and it's like, look, I know that that this is not going to produce fruit in your life. Do you think that this is going to produce fruit in your life? I think it's also really important to get on their level and remember what it's like. And I know it's a little bit different for all of us, depending on what your upbringing was and so on and so forth. But I've level set with my kids and said, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to conformity. And the world right now is going to test your mettle. They're going to find out what you're made out of. Right? And so I need you to know that I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to want to go drink, to go have sex before marriage, to go, you know what I mean? Break the curfew.
Yeah.
All of the different things that, different kids, depending on what their bent is, might be tempted by. And so I think helping them understand that they're not abnormal because of that they're tempted by those things. But that they need to learn to face those things in life and be able to be their own person, right? And then speak to the person that they are. You're better than this. We expect more than this. And you can bet your bippy there's going to be consequences that I'm going to leverage. And here's what they're going to be if this happens again. Some of it goes without saying. So if there's been some things, if like somebody came rolling up in my house drunk, or, something of that nature, so to speak, something that's obviously egregious, absolutely unacceptable, right? Then the next morning we're going to be having a conversation, and I'm not going to set them up to lie. I used to hate it when my parents would do that. I hate it in retrospect. And Julie and I talked about this a lot. Don't ask them questions to bait them into lying so that you can catch them into lying. If you know, just tell them. Don't even. No. Don't even. I already know, so don't even. Okay. I know, so don't lie. Let's deal with the reality. And as adults, let's figure out how to move forward here so that we can progress.
Yeah, I just want to cinch it up here, David, and it's so important for our kids to know that we love them, that we are for them.
Yes.
And in this situation, what does love require? And sometimes love requires discipline. And so being able to come to our kids and saying, do you believe, first of all, that I love you? Do you understand that my job as your parent is to protect you? So even though I understand the temptations, my job as a parent is to make sure I set you up for success and provide you with the best environment that I possibly can. And so because of that, and because of the choice that you made, I have to make the difficult choice now to enforce the rules of this house. So versus coming with the head wagging,
Right.
caught you and you sin,
Yeah.
doing one of those things. That's not how God does it with us. It's his loving kindness that causes
good, babe.
repentance. And so those fundamental things that we've talked about on previous calls gives us the permission to be able to say, you can do whatever you want, but just be willing to pay for the consequences. Our kids know that we love them. When we've had to discipline them, we've come back to those fundamental things that I just said. Do you know that we love you?
And we lead in
Do
with
you
this.
believe that we are for you? Do you understand we want you to red line on fun? Do you understand you just blew it? And that puts the onus back on them and gives us the permission then as well, with that covering, to enforce the rules. That's where we say again, rules without relationship breeds rebellion. It causes them to be defiant.
That's good. Luke.
And so coming back and reinforcing the relationship, even in our discipline, gives us a permission. They understand, just like when our Heavenly Father disciplines us, most of the time we're like, oh, man, I probably deserved a whole lot worse than that. So that's kind of the fundamentals behind what we're talking about. But we do encourage you to go back, because if you just listen to one of the lessons, you might miss some of the fundamental principles that gave us the permission to parent with that freedom. Make sense?
Mhm.
All
Yep.
right.
There's times where we have to push pause, pan back, reassess the current reality. You know what I mean? Formulate a plot together and then go back in on the battlefield, and it takes two. And it's really important that the two of you are in unity in that. And I think just leading with love. And again, we preface most of those conversations when we got it right. We always prefaced it with the things that Julie just said. And again, that kind of just begins the process of softening their heart. They're already feeling like a turd, and they know that they screwed up. Seriously, they do, just like you did when you were. And so I think it just gives them, an opportunity to again begin to get in the right mindset to have a productive conversation about it.
Great question. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, appreciate it, buddy.
All right,
Tina and Chris
Tina.
Rudiger.
Hello.
Oh,
Blah,
It's nice to know that we're not alone.
right.
Couple
I think
of,
we all feel that way, right?
yes. A couple of quick points in shotgun method. Number one, in this conversation that you just wrapped up with David, one of the things that I really tried to basically repeating what you were saying, but in a different form, is when we were having these conversations with the boys, I really tried to make it not so much a war of wills as much as an application of wisdom. It's easy to say, well, this is my house, these are my rules. Well, this is the law, this is what authority says. And, young people just, they're not trying to hear that. They're trying to test their boundaries, as they should. And so being very careful to format a conversation so that it doesn't turn into a war of wills as much as an application of wisdom.
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so good.
That is good. Yes.
Man.
Yeah.
That.
And another thing was I remember leaving home when I joined the Navy, and I had to get away from my parents. I had to discover the world for myself. I had to stub my toe a little bit. And one of the things that was vitally important was when our kids are little, giving them stability means putting clothes on their back, giving them food, giving them a place to live. That's the stability that they need. But as they come into the realm of where they're getting ready to go out on their own into the world, they still need stability, but they need you to be an island that they can come back to, an island of stability. And I think sticking to your principles and your rules, but at the same time, as you said, telling them that you're never going to be outside of my love. You're never going to be outside of being welcomed home.
Right.
However, this is the stable platform I'm giving you to come back to.
Yeah, that's so
And
good.
so having that attitude of this is what I believe. You're free to go test your limits, but know that there are consequences, just like you guys said, but still offering that stability, but being kind of like an island. It's like, you guys go out there, do your thing, go into the world, figure it out. We will be here as a stable environment for you to always come back to and talk to and have a place to come back and refresh. And on that note, similarly, when our kids were younger, they had to rely on us. They didn't have jobs. They couldn't do things for themselves. They had to rely on us. So how do we breed an environment where when they have the ability to take care of themselves, they still want to come back to us and ask us questions and have that conversation and have that relationship? One of the things that I would offer is that Tina and I, in refreshing and rebuilding our marriage, our kids have seen us
Right.
help. They have seen us getting mentors. In fact, sometimes we'll tell them, hey, what my mentors told me in this situation was, right? But they see us continually growing and stretching ourselves. So they know that when they do come to us for advice, it's not just from the stories that they've heard 1,000 times, right? It's like we're still relevant in that we're still learning, we're still challenging ourselves. And what I'm passing on to you is fresh and relevant.
So good. I think about a time when one of our kids asked me, about moving in with someone. And I was like, oh, we won't have sex.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, and I just laughed out loud and I'm like, okay, let's have just an honest, first of all, there is nothing you can do that will ever change my love for you. But if you're asking me for permission and blessing to move in with this person, absolutely no way.
And I
And if
don't
you
love the other
think-
person anyway, so it's perfectly on limits for me to kill them if you decide to move forward. That's the consequences thing we were talking about.
And
Just
so
saying.
I think that we have to know what we believe, why we believe what we believe, and then realize that we set the parameters, we build the relationship, we leverage our influence, and then there's sometimes that our kids are going to make a decision, and there's a place where we provide the unconditional love while not necessarily accepting the choices that they're making. And I think as a parent, it's absolutely essential for us to let them know that without it being anything of judgment. And that's the hard part, being able to come to God and say, we don't endorse this, but never doubt our love for you. We're not going to do this. We can't accept this, but we always accept you and love you.
And then honestly allowing them to shovel their own way out of it. And it's difficult. It's so hard, when you have the power to bail them out. It is the worst flipping thing in the world that you can do, folks. Because how do you get stronger? How do you become stronger? You have to work the muscle. And it hurts. You got to make the muscle sore. You got to go through some pain. No pain, no gain, right? Remember that one? I mean, it's the same thing in life. And so I think that sometimes in this day and age, we've all longed for something more for our kids than what we had in so many different ways. And we've created a bunch of softies. You know, I'm not putting that on y'all. I don't know what you did, but I'm just telling you as a nation, I see a lot of weakness and a lot of soft people that are not hard, you know, and I keep that within the context of what it is that I'm saying, you know. But I think the way that we become able to handle things is by weathering some things, facing the consequences, you know, and then by gummit, working our way back out of the mess that we've gotten ourselves in and paying the consequences. And I see some things that one of our kids in particular is doing right now, and some of the decisions that they're making again, and it's going to cause them some heartache. I hope that it doesn't, but I'm just telling you, it's going to. And when it does, I'm going to be like, figure it to flip out. I'm not even using which gender it is because you'll know exactly which one of my kids I'm talking about, but figure it out.
All right. Hey, guys, we are actually well past the hour. Thank you for hanging out, staying on here. It's been a fun series. Thanks for being the very first that we taught this to.
Yeah.
We will be creating a professional video series. We'll let you know when that's out. But in the meantime, if you want to go back, rewatch this, we do encourage you to watch each building block all the way to the end of love. What does love require? Gregory Ray, I want you to close this out in prayer. Just to let you know, we'll go back to the every other week format. So we'll have 2 more phone calls by the end of this year. We will be teaching on the vision call, helping you to cast the vision, land on your word for 2024. So we hope you'll join that. But other than that, thanks for joining in.
And we'll send out communications on all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we'll open that up so that you can, you know, invite some people if you want to. Don't miss this vision call. It'll probably be the next call we teach. So that'll be 2 weeks from today.
Yep.
So that
Not
doesn't
next
fall on
week, but
holiday,
the
so that's
following.
good. We're
Yep.
not, are we out of town?
Nope.
Okay, good. So you want to be a part of this. It's a really, really key thing for this time of year for us to you know, give you a little bit of direction on how to create a vision for the upcoming year, but also wouldn't it be a shame if you went into this next year and didn't assess where you were